Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Football Game Tonight podcast. I'm your host, John Kuzma. This is the place for all your latest NFL news and action. So if you're looking for buzz from around the league, you've come to the right place. And on the ticker for this episode, we're just going to do the Micah Parsons story. We're going to keep it simple. We're going to talk about both sides of the trade. We're going to talk about the Cowboys. We're going to talk about the Packers. We'll do a little bit of a review of history of teams that have traded and made a big swing on a player. Obviously, we're probably going to focus on the Khalil Mack trade. You know, the Bears traded 2 first-round picks for Khalil Mack. So very similar to what Micah Parsons and the Packers just did. We're going to start from the Cowboys' point of view. So I think the Cowboys won this trade, and I saw all over the internet, you couldn't miss it. Everybody was basically on the Packers side, that they hit a home run with Micah Parsons. They robbed the Cowboys blind. I'm on the opposite side of this one. I think Jerry Jones robbed the bank by trading for Micah Parsons. Because just hear me out. Micah Parsons, at the very end of his time with the Cowboys, was 1 foot out the door. It was obvious. And to get 2 first-round picks for a guy that was 1 foot out the door, yeah, he's a sensational football player. There's no taking that away from Micah Parsons. But he was 1 foot out the door. I'm not buying his agent or Micah Parsons saying he never wanted to leave. You know, you were acting a fool, and then the Cowboys decided to move on from you. You can't tell me now that he's on the Packers that he never wanted to leave, or, you know, he was hoping that they could work things out. I'm not buying that. I don't subscribe to that at all. To me, it was pretty obvious when we saw Micah Parsons laying on that trainer's table during the preseason game. Just not a good look for Micah Parsons. Clearly didn't want to be there, was clearly checked out. I'm not, listening to any fans that are defending Micah Parsons by saying he was just getting some rest. Come on. That was done on purpose. It was done for the theatrics. And Micah Parsons, during his time with the Cowboys, was all about theatrics, all about his podcast, and all about, the attention being on him. And we heard rumblings in the locker room for a long time that he was starting to rub people the wrong way. And you look at the Cowboys' history. The Cowboys always paid their players. Think about Dak. Think about Ezekiel Elliott. They always were, taking care of their players, which is a good thing. But sometimes you have to make hard decisions. And I think Jerry Jones was right on this one to realize that this was the time to make a hard decision. Because Micah Parsons was 1 foot out the door. He clearly wasn't helping the environment in the locker room. He was hurting that environment. And, Dak Prescott was fed up with him. When you have so much invested in, your quarterback, and, how much the Cowboys want to, take care of their players, and you have a guy like Micah Parsons that is, acting, maybe it was an act, but at the very least acting like he wants to go somewhere else and play for a different team. How does that help your football team? How does that help your football team? It doesn't. So to me, the Cowboys get 2 first-round picks. They get 2 first-round picks. So now you have the draft capital to build this team up into a true contender. You have the draft capital to do something special. And remember, for the longest time, the Cowboys couldn't get over the 49ers. And the 49ers swing big and miss on Trey Lance. And they lose out on a lot of draft capital that kind of set the 49ers back a little bit. And now the Cowboys, do the opposite thing where they ship off Micah Parsons, and they have 4 first-round picks over the next 2 years? I'm telling you, this is going to be a chance for the Cowboys to slingshot themselves to the top of the NFC. Because if they hit on these picks, and don't be fooled, do not be fooled. One of the things that Jerry Jones does well is he drafts players. Look at some of the players the Cowboys have drafted. Zach Martin, CeeDee Lamb, hit on Dak Prescott later on. Ezekiel, they can draft players. That's what they do. They draft well. So, to me, it's like, being able to have more draft capital because that plays to your strength. The one thing you do exceptionally well, which is find talent in the draft and then pick them on draft night, bring them into your team, and then develop them, which is what the Cowboys do best. That's what they do best. So much of success is knowing yourself. And they knew that, they're good at spotting talent and they're good at developing that talent. That's what they do. So to double down on that is just a good move for the Cowboys because Jerry Jones and the rest of the front office, they can find talent and they can bring them in and they can develop them. So to double down on that, to get the 4 first-round picks over the next 2 years, I think that's a home run, more than a home run. I think that's a grand slam for this Cowboys team. Oh, yeah, they also got Kenny Clark, too. And Kenny Clark was just the way the Cowboys sweetened the pot a little bit. The Packers felt like Kenny Clark was at the end of his run. His time is winding down. But Kenny Clark has had a lot of success in his past. And sometimes, landing with a new team, you can kind of feel reinvigorated. If that happens with Kenny Clark, it's going to be another win for this Cowboys team because if Kenny Clark can be inserted into that Cowboys defensive front and he can be the old Kenny Clark, then how is this not a win for the Cowboys? You got the draft capital so you can play to your strength, which is identifying talent and drafting them, then developing them. You got Kenny Clark, and you're hoping that he could turn back the clock a little bit and be the dominant Kenny Clark that we've seen in the past. You get rid of a guy that was on the verge of becoming a team cancer. He might have already been a team cancer. And I think the thing that people are really overlooking is he was 1 foot out the door. He was 1 foot out the door, laying on the trainer's table, didn't give a damn what was happening, didn't care about the team, put himself above the team. That's the thing people are overlooking. People are so enamored by Micah Parsons' talent, they're not looking at Micah Parsons' character. They're not looking at his character, they're looking at his talent. Everybody's raving about this guy because of his talent. And yeah, he is super talented. But his character isn't as good as you'd like it to be. And that's pretty obvious by how things were starting to wind down with the Cowboys. This was a guy that put himself above the team. This was a guy that his ego came before his teammates. Is that the guy you want to build your team around? Is that the guy you want to pay over $40 million to? Is that, looking at it from the Packers' perspective, is that the guy you want to trade 2 first-round picks and Kenny Clark for? That's not the type of deal I would do if I was running a team. I feel 100% confident that Jerry Jones robbed the bank on this deal. No doubts about it. There's nobody that can tell me differently. There's no pushing back on what I'm saying. I would say you don't know ball. You can't sit here and tell me I don't know ball. I played since I was a little kid till I was an adult, played semi-pro, owned a semi-pro football team. My family owned a semi-pro football team. I've been around football my whole life. I don't care what some guy in the comment section says. Oh, Packers, robbed the Cowboys. They fleeced the Cowboys. Really? For a guy that quit? And let me ask you this, going back to the thing I'm talking about. Everybody's blown away by Micah Parsons' talent, and nobody's looking into Micah Parsons' character. Let me ask you this. If Micah Parsons, at the end of his time, quit on the Cowboys, what do you think he's going to do with the Packers? What do you think he's going to do with the Packers? He already showed you who he was. When things don't go his way, when he becomes unhappy, he's going to be 1 foot out the door with the Packers too. 1 foot out the door. You watch. I'm calling it right now. 1 foot out the door with the Packers. Just give it time. When things don't go their way, when they start losing games, or if things don't work out, or if he becomes unhappy, maybe he doesn't like living in Green Bay, 1 foot out the door. People don't change just because they go somewhere else. Their patterns repeat themselves. Their behavior repeats themselves. So for the Packers, a team that kind of had some good things going. You know, they turned the page from Aaron Rodgers. Jordan Love was holding things together. There was, you know, a little promise there because they were doing some good things through the draft. And now they sell the farm for Micah Parsons, a guy who might have talent off the charts, but a guy that has questionable character. That's why he's on the Packers to begin with, because he has questionable character. So how the Packers couldn't read between the lines on that one, maybe not having an owner bit the Packers in the ass on this one. I'm just saying. Because losing out on those draft picks, seeing Kenny Clark, even if he is starting to decline because he's getting older, a guy that was a great leader in that locker room. I don't know, man. I'm 100% on the Cowboys side. I think Jerry Jones, let me say this. I think Jerry Jones gets a bad rap. This guy was a brilliant guy, hitting on that oil, making all that money, then buying the Cowboys, and people will say he's such a bad owner. He's drafted really well. He took care of his players. Yeah, maybe he should have been the person he was with this Micah Parsons trade sooner, where he makes the tough decision and decides not to resign some of his players. But can you really hate on the guy for taking care of his players, taking care of Dak Prescott, taking care of Ezekiel Elliott? The good owners, and not only that, you know, in football, but the good owners in life take care of their people. Jerry Jones took care of his guys. Hit on the oil. Had a bunch of other great investments. Bought the Cowboys. And people will say he's so bad. He did win 3 Super Bowls. It's not like he's some of these other NFL teams that never even got a whiff of a Super Bowl. This isn't, the Browns or, the Panthers or the Cardinals. I know the Panthers have gotten to Super Bowls. But I'm talking about the Panthers of recent that haven't been that competitive. So to me, it's like this guy won 3 Super Bowls. He's been better than people give him credit for. He nails these draft picks, and he made an instinctive decision by trading Micah Parsons. He trusted his gut on this one. That took some balls, man. To trade Micah Parsons, that takes some balls. And for him to trust his gut, you can see why Jerry Jones has been so successful in life. He knew when to not take care of his guy. He knew that this guy was a little bit of a problem in the locker room. He was rubbing people the wrong way. He was irritating his teammates, and it was time to send one off. And he sent Micah Parsons packing. And look at what he got in return for it. 2 first-round picks. Kenny Clark back to kind of limit the blow on that defensive line. The draft capital that he needs to build this team into a competitor for years to come. I love it. I love it for the Cowboys. I'm a Lions fan first. I'm a Cowboys fan second. I think Jerry Jones, even if I wasn't a Cowboys fan, I think Jerry Jones delivered the goods for this franchise, for the Cowboys, for America's team. He did the right thing. And now Micah Parsons is the Packers' problem. So let's talk about the Bears. The Bears trade for Khalil Mack. Sent out 2 first-round picks. And this isn't new. Everybody talks about this trade, referencing the Micah Parsons trade. They talk about what the Bears did with Khalil Mack. Traded 2 first-round picks for Khalil Mack. And what did the Bears do? They peaked in the wild card. Everybody talks about that. You know what people don't talk about? They don't talk about the Raiders. The Raiders traded Khalil Mack to the Bears. And what happened to the Raiders? The Raiders got a lot better. John Gruden and the Raiders got a lot better. Now, part of that is John Gruden being a great coach, but they also brought in that draft capital and helped build up their roster and build up their culture. And the Raiders got a lot better because the Raiders were struggling. It wasn't working. They trade Khalil Mack. They get the draft capital, and they became a much better team. The Bears sold the farm for Khalil Mack and peaked in the wild card. Who had a brighter future? The Bears that fizzled out, or the Raiders that would have really been a contender if John Gruden didn't get canned because of all that scandal. We all know about that. To me, I like the slow but steady growth and the trajectory that the Raiders were on. You keep adding draft capital. You keep adding picks. You keep building a winning culture. The Cowboys are going to have a chance to emulate what the Raiders did. I don't like what the Bears did, trading for Khalil Mack, going all in, and then, you get to the wild card, but now you're missing that draft capital to keep adding pieces to the mix and keep getting better. And what happens? Your growth becomes stagnant, and then you peak at the wild card. I think that Raiders team could have went beyond that. Could have went beyond what that Bears team did. Way beyond if John Gruden doesn't get canned. So the Cowboys having a chance to replicate what the Raiders did, getting the draft capital back, adding those first-round picks, adding those super talented players to your team, building a better culture by also getting rid of Micah Parsons. And that's the difference between Micah Parsons and Khalil Mack. At least Khalil Mack has good character. Micah Parsons doesn't have good character like Khalil Mack does. So the Cowboys also got rid of a dysfunctional player, a guy with bad character. You don't lay on a training table and be a complete unprofessional unless you're a little bit of a knucklehead. I don't care. That's the truth. On this show, we call it like we see it. I'm a fan of Micah Parsons as a player. I'm not a huge fan of Micah Parsons as a person. And even as a player, there was some signs there that maybe against elite competition, he doesn't show up like he needs to. Maybe against the run, he doesn't set the edge like he needs to. You got to contain the play on those run plays, or the running back gets to the sideline and it's off to the races. Micah Parsons setting that edge, playing the run, containing the play, struggled at times to do those things. Great pass rusher, but you got to be a two-way player. You got to be a pass rusher and a run stopper in the National Football League. That's how you become a great player. He's a great pass rusher, but he needs to be a little more well-rounded against the run. And you got to have that it factor against elite competition. You got to have that it factor against elite competition, because when you go against the very best, you got to shine on the biggest stages. And that was also a concern for the Cowboys when it comes to Micah Parsons. So Cowboys are just like the Raiders, trading away Khalil Mack and get all that draft capital back. And the Packers are just like the Bears. The Packers and the Bears being in the same division, the NFC North, they should have been able to look at history and be like, hey, that didn't work out for the Bears when they traded for Khalil Mack, so why is it going to work out for us? Not only that, questionable character. He quit on the Cowboys at the end. Is he going to quit on us at the end? Yeah, he is. Come on, man. Put 2 and 2 together. Sometimes you got to read between the lines, and sometimes you got to be able to connect the dots. I don't think the Packers did a good enough job of doing that on this trade. And guess what? It's already becoming a problem for the Packers because Micah Parsons' back is still giving them problems. Is he going to be able to play in week 1? Yes or no? We'll see. I heard it's very possible that Micah Parsons is not ready to go in week 1 versus the Lions. That's a good Lions team that is going up against these Packers. Do you want to be without the guy you just sold the farm to get? I wouldn't want to be in that situation. I need a healthy, optimistic Micah Parsons ready to go. You notice he did all the press conferences. He was there for the press conferences, but is he going to be there for the game week 1? Funny how that works out, huh? And I get it. You have to do press conferences in the NFL, but he'll be there for the press conferences. We'll see if he's there for week 1. So we'll see. And I just don't know, man. If you're the Packers, you're giving up all that draft capital in Kenny Clark for an injured player. And somehow he was able to squeeze through the physical and got cleared by the Packers. And now he's actually hurt with a bad back. It's already off to a bad start for the Packers. And I feel like they should have known better. What about the fact that the Packers, for how good of a team the Packers are and all the history that the Packers have, they have a great history up there in Green Bay, Wisconsin. But they're also the NFL's smallest market. Did you guys know that? The Packers are the NFL's smallest market. So the Cowboys are the exact opposite. They drive the ratings for the whole entire NFL. Those 40 million regular season games are always Cowboys games. It's like Cowboys-Eagles, Cowboys-Giants. When you get 40 million viewers in a regular season game in the NFL, it's usually a Cowboys game. The fan base of the Cowboys is the biggest. They're the highest valued franchise in all of sports. You don't think there's some perks for Micah Parsons that he gets from being on the Cowboys? With 40 million people watching those games, you don't think there's endorsement deals? You don't think there's popularity? What's going to happen when he goes from the team that drives the ratings to the whole entire NFL to the league's smallest market, up there in cold Green Bay, Wisconsin? I'm telling you right now, we might see an unhappy Micah Parsons sooner than later. Because it's like you had all the eyes on you, all the attention, and that leads to endorsements and sponsorship opportunities, a whole bunch of stuff that comes with being on the Cowboys. And now he's going to be in the NFL's smallest market, not a lot to do. The Packers have a good following, and there's some diehard Packers fans up there, but there's just not the same opportunities that comes from being on the Cowboys. We know that's the case because the Cowboys drive the ratings for the whole entire NFL. So it's just such a stark contrast for Micah Parsons, going from the team that drives the ratings to the smallest market, and he might just end up being really unhappy up there in Green Bay, and he has nobody to blame but himself. This is going to end up really bad for Micah Parsons. You can already see the writing on the wall. Because he overplayed his hand. He put his ego above his team. He got what he wanted, but now what he's saying he really didn't want, because you get the feeling he's already having regrets about being on the Packers, already having regrets about leaving the Cowboys. He thought he was the most important guy in the whole world. He was the only thing that mattered. He threw his teammates under the bus by putting it all on him. And now he got what he was supposed to want, and it's going to be exactly what he didn't want. You watch. I'm calling it right now. He's going to be so unhappy, and he's going to realize what he lost. I wouldn't be surprised if he starts losing his love for football, because people don't realize how big the Cowboys brand is. They don't realize it. They don't realize how big that fan base are. I always say this. I used to think being a New York Yankee was the most prestigious thing in sports. I still think it's really prestigious. One of the most prestigious things you can do in all sports is be a New York Yankee. But now I know the most prestigious thing is to be a Dallas Cowboy. It's not even close. The Cowboys are the highest valued franchise in all sports. They have fans all over the globe. The Cowboys are not America's team. They're the world's team. Up there in Canada, I live in the Metro Detroit area. The fans in Canada are Cowboys fans. The fans across the globe, Mexico, are Cowboys fans. There's a lot of people that watch football in Mexico. There's a lot of people that watch football in Brazil. Canada watches football. The NFL is huge at this point. It's, like Roger Goodell said, he's a competitor with Apple at this point. He's not a competitor with NBA. He's a competitor with Apple. That's what Roger Goodell said. There's fans even outside the United States that are diehard Cowboys fans. And Micah Parsons just gave all that up. Those other countries, when they want to broadcast a game on their local networks, what game are they choosing to watch? They're dying to get the Cowboys to broadcast to their home country. Whether it's Canada, Mexico, Brazil, they want the Cowboys game. And yeah, they might be a fan of what the Packers do and their franchise and their history. Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre, the rest of those guys. But it's not the Cowboys. It's not the Cowboys. Everybody wants to broadcast those Cowboys games, which is why the Cowboys are always the team playing, the common denominator in all those 40 million viewer games. In the regular season, the most watched games are usually 40 million viewers, and the Cowboys are usually one of those teams playing. Micah Parsons is no longer on that team anymore. He's on the Packers. Good luck to you, Micah Parsons. As someone that roots for the Cowboys, congratulations, because things are about to get a whole lot better. You just secured your draft capital to get this team back in competition for Super Bowls, to be competitive for Super Bowls, what I'm trying to say. And I think they're going to be really happy with this trade in the long run. And I think people are going to look back and say, hey, we were wrong about Jerry Jones. 3 Super Bowls, bought the Cowboys, success in everything he's done. And yeah, he drafted Micah Parsons. And he drafted a whole lot of other superstars too. So don't be surprised when he drafts the next Micah Parsons with one of these 4 first-round picks in the next 2 years. I'm John Kuzma. That's all I got. Thank you guys for tuning in to the Football Game Tonight podcast. Check us out anywhere podcasts are found. I'm John Kuzma. I'm signing off.